women of color made a big splash leading up to this month's primary election. They fought in several hard-fought, high-profile races. For some, the end result wasn't what they wanted, and it's been a week of picking up the pieces and sketching out a new plan. So while the election is over, the passion for causes important to our community continues. So what's next for them? Tonight, we discuss running for office and the lessons learned by Black female candidates.
All right, good Wednesday evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us on NBC6 Voices for our virtual conversation on our YouTube and Facebook pages. We have a great show lined up. Remember, you can post your comments. Let us know your thoughts. If you have any questions for any of our panelists, please feel free to ask. Now, tonight's guests put all of their energy into running for elected office this year. They weren't successful during the primary, and although the outcome may have been maybe not what they wanted, they learned some very valuable lessons. Take a look at our panelists joining us for this all-important conversation: Ruby Green, Melba Pearson, and Olanike Adebayo. Thank you so much for joining us, to all of our panelists. This is a great discussion. I can't wait to have it. So, Ruby, let's start off with you. And your story is a little bit different, and we want you to explain exactly what happened. Tell us about running for public defender.
Oh my goodness. When I actually first started to run for public defender, it had just hit me that everything that was going on in our office was not what it was supposed to be. I got to see it. I was in administration for some time. I got to see how the office didn't really want to train the attorneys. The office actually didn't want the supervisors to go to court with the attorneys. And I was literally concerned about, not only the attorneys and the staff, but the clients that we had. And so I went into running for office with just prayer and determination that I could change this system, because we already know that people of color are being sentenced 3 times as much as their white counterparts for the same exact crime. And we already know that public defenders are not seen as real attorneys, and that, that they're seen as people who work against them. And that's not the absolute truth. We already know that we do have some amazing attorneys at the public defender's office, and I just wanted to showcase them. So that's one of the reasons why I decided to run. And I did. It was an 18-month journey. I literally went into this race without having any money, without having any political support, without having any political connections or name recognition or anything like that. And we actually raised, and I'm ashamed to say, because I know everybody else is going to be like, oh, we raised so much more. But I raised a little over $20,000 for a county-wide race. And a lot of people don't understand that this system for running for office is really built against us. Our filing fees alone were $10,173. So half of the money that I raised, I had to give it away. And I didn't even understand, or I didn't even, know why. Like, oh my goodness, why is it so high? Like, this is just a public defender's race. And so I literally ran this campaign on a little less than $9,000 to $10,000. And I think that we did great. We came in second place. I had a lot of support. And wow. I could say that I didn't use any of those slate cards. I didn't use any of those chasing ballots. I really did the work of the people. And, I was out there in the community. I was slaving it the last few days for early voting. I really went out there, turned 5 shades darker, and asked the people for their votes. And they were really concerned as well that I was actually the only public defender candidate in the race that was actually in the courtrooms and trying cases. So there were a lot of people that was concerned. And I just wish that I was able to get the message out there a little bit more. That's the only thing that I can say. And looking back in hindsight, figuring out other ways in order to get your messaging out, because it's really about popularity and, word of mouth. Oh, yeah. And I'm just a little girl from the hood, and never known that I was going to be able to do anything like this. I did not know. I'm from Broward County. I'm from a town called Collier City, which is in Pompano Beach. And I'm one of 15 kids. I'm the only one to graduate and go to college. Wow. I was sold for drugs at the age of 13. And I literally thought that I was going to work at McDonald's for the rest of my life. I thought that that was going to be the point in my life that I was going to make it. I made it if I was a manager at McDonald's. So it was really important to me that I can show people that look like me that we can do better for ourselves.
That's right. Now we're going to get back to you, Ruby. Yeah. The reason why is because you were told not to run.
Yep.
You were told that you couldn't do it.
Yep.
And you were also told that you would get fired.
Yep.
If you ran.
Yep.
And pretty much that's kind of what happened. So
that's what happened.
Thought, before we get back to you, because I know everyone wants to hear about that. What's going on with that? Okay, Nikkei.
Yes, sir.
Wow. Nikkei, you had some incredible endorsements and everything else for your race, a very tight race, by the way, for circuit court judge. I want you to tell us what happened, and I want you to tell us about your passion and why you decided to run.
Yeah, so this is my second run. I ran in 2018 for Judge Taretha Lundy Thomas's seat. She was retiring from the county court bench, so I ran that race. Maybe a little naive, not knowing all the stats and strategic moves I needed to make. So we tightened up. And we ran this time for circuit court judge because most of my career has been in front of circuit court. So we ran with the experience I had over my opponent. We ran with, the endorsements that we had different from my opponent. And, we work very hard for everything we get. So I've never said I'm a politician. I began this campaign with, I'm not a politician, I'm a public servant. And I've been a public servant in my career and in my private life as well. So with this campaign, knowing that we're 62% Hispanic, I had to shift gears and gear towards and make sure the Hispanics knew who I am, about me, about my family, about my life, so I could get those votes. And Saturday's numbers after 2 weeks of early voting were 140,000 Hispanics came out to vote, over 50,000 Caucasians, and over 40,000 Blacks. So again, where we live in Miami-Dade County, it's very hard. You have to be very strategic and get these votes. The good thing is I learned and met so many people on the campaign I never would have met. That's the great thing about doing this. But again, as judges, we're not geared for politics or geared for campaigning. We're geared to take the bench and do a job and serve the public. So we'll see. Well, I know you'll ask some more questions later, but you just really have to gear towards our county, which is 62% Hispanic. And that's what it is.
And I'm sure you learned some valuable lessons. So I want to get to those lessons in just a bit. And we're going to also talk about one of the endorsements that you received from the Miami Herald and how that was kind of twisted for your opponent. We're going to get to that in a little bit as well and talk about that. Nikkei, thank you so much. Absolutely. And Melba Pearson, my other queen. I got three queens on this panel right now. Melba Pearson. Oh, wow. I don't know where to start with you. Really, but I want to hear about why you decided to run for state attorney, and you're running against someone who has been in that seat for 20 plus years,
27 years,
27 years. But you decided to take on a giant. Tell me why.
I did, because it was the right thing to do. John, when I looked at the landscape of where we are as a county when it came to criminal justice and criminal justice reform, I was a prosecutor in that office for close to 16 years. I saw what worked, but I also saw, much like Ruby, what didn't work and where there was areas for improvement. And at the end of the day, it is the elected prosecutor, the top person in that seat, who makes a decision as to what types of cases are going to be prioritized, what the work culture is going to be like, what sort of reforms are they going to embrace or not. And after my work at the ACLU of Florida, when I really began to learn how, Black Miamians received 3 times worse outcomes at every single stage of the criminal justice system, as opposed to their white counterparts, Black Hispanics up to 6 times worse outcomes. And having presented that information to my opponent, at the time that I was at the ACLU of Florida, and her basically being like, all right, well, whatever, and not really doing anything to address these inequalities, that definitely pushed me. And then learning more about the Darren Rainey case and so many other cases of police or correction officer violence that went unanswered over the course of 27 years, especially looking at the fact that over the course of 27 years, my opponent has never filed charges against a police officer for an on-duty killing. Of course, that's not to say that, every single killing by a police officer is unjustified. That's not the case at all. But there are times when it is, when it is unjustified and action has to be taken. And her reluctance to do so told me that it was definitely time for a change in the guard. So, over the course of the election, I was on the campaign trail from January 15th, which was Dr. King's actual birthday, all the way until Election Day on August 18th. We took the case to the people and we raised awareness around the different issues around bail reform, around police accountability, around juvenile justice and how our juveniles were not being treated equally, and made the case for equality. And at the end of the day, 154,000 voters agreed with our message of change. Unfortunately, it was not enough, but at the same token, I came into this much like Ruby and a little bit like Nikkei with not a lot of name recognition, definitely no money. I'm a daughter of immigrants, and my campaign was fueled by the people. So it was individual donations, not large corporations, not prison industry people, nothing like that. It was regular Miamians giving $25, $100 because they believed in our message. So, the election was what it was. The people spoke and the result was what it was. Obviously disappointed, but the fight for justice and equality doesn't end here. There's, the case of Edward Foster. There's so many other, cases that are coming to light or just, it's becoming clear that some of these issues are still ongoing. So I intend to continue to advocate and keep the pressure on to make sure justice is real, accessible, and equitable for everyone in this county.
And Melba, what's the biggest thing that you learned throughout this whole process running for this position for state attorney?
I learned a few things. I don't even know what the biggest one would be, but definitely that connection with the people is huge. But name recognition is very important. A lot of this had to do with educating people on what a state attorney does, what power they have. I think a lot of people really started to realize more so in the wake of the deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and many others, the role that a prosecutor plays, even if you're not someone who is directly impacted by the system as a survivor of a crime or as someone charged with a crime. So I think it's about that education piece. It's about getting that name recognition. But also you have to learn to roll with the punches because there will be lies. There will be flat out slander on your name. There will be attacks on your family. I remember during early voting, into different poll workers who, because of the fact that I had a good relationship with a lot of people out of the polls, they were telling people, oh, don't vote for Melba because she's in an interracial marriage, her husband's white. So don't vote for her for state attorney. Yeah, and it was because of people, my connections in the community, that I remember at one point, one of my connections literally brought a poll worker over to me and say to her face what you just said to me. And he looked down, he told me, and then we ended up engaging in a dialogue, and it definitely, he came away with a different opinion, but he was wearing my opponent's t-shirt. So that was the type of vile attacks that were going on behind the scenes to discourage people from voting.
Yep.
Well, this is and I see both of you shaking your heads. And so, Ruby, you're shaking your head, and Nikkei, you're shaking your head. Why? Why, Ruby, are you shaking your head?
Because like when you are entering into politics, like you don't really, you hear stories, but you don't really know until you actually get to, feel it and see it. And I can tell you, we sent out several emails to people who are considered Democrats. And then you would get emails back to people cursing at you saying, because of the Black Lives Matter movements, I'm never voting for anybody Black. And, people are saying like, oh, a white person put her in the race. And I'm like, where is this white man at? Because I need that money. Where he at? So it's different. It is so different when you're in it to see and know how and what people really think of you, because they wouldn't say it to your face. You know, Melba got to get someone in her face and say what they said, but you get people hiding behind computer screens, hide behind Facebook or Instagram, who are just saying disparaging things. And, you know, we've heard it for many, many years for women of color. You know, I'm considering this whole little forum here for colored girls who consider politics 2.0, but we've heard it for a number of years. And just to be in the situation, that's what really got to me, being able to see it for myself. And not that it's against other people, but at this point in time, it was against me, you know. So
and sorry to cut you off. It's interesting because Nikkei, you were shaking your head as well. And, you know, you're biracial. You're biracial. You come from a biracial. Yes, I do my homework. You come from a biracial family. But as Ruby and Melba just talked about, well, people just see you straight up as a Black woman, and you only care about Black people. You don't care about anybody else. Did you find that to be the case?
I did. So I went to, you know, this time, like I said, we had to be strategic. So I had to get out my comfort zone and go to different polling places I had not been in 2018. So I went to those polling places and I would join with everybody else, my T-shirt, my palm cards, and I would hand it. And I know a little Spanish, right? But not enough to say these races are nonpartisan, because of course they want to know, are you Republican? Right. And if you're not Republican, then I'm not voting for you. And they would see, you know, everybody else's card is red, white, and blue. You see me with purple and a little teal because it sticks out. So my sign sticks out in all the red, white, and blue, right? And so they look at my card, they look at my face, and they just say, no, 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 because, you know, you're Black, or this is your card. We know you're Democrat and we're Republicans and we're not voting for you. Or, you know, we try to tell them, again, nonpartisan, and they're like, no, you have a party, and if you can't tell me, I'm not voting for you. Also with Facebook. So Facebook are your friends, Instagram are usually your friends, but you have a political page that you open up to voters. And they said the nastiest things, again, asking about the race and, you know, asking about partisan lines. And I'm telling them I can't answer that. Judicial canons don't allow us to answer that. And even though I'm not a judge yet, I have to follow our professional canons. And they didn't want to hear it. They didn't care. Or they said, oh, your people own slaves. My people were slaves straight from West Africa. What is he talking about? He's talking about the name to him is Nike when it's Nikkei. So he's saying that Nike owns slaves and this, and then you're a communist, and just because you got the Herald endorsement, you're definitely a communist. I'm like, I learned how to swipe and block so fast. I never knew I could do that. I was like, swipe block, because why? If you have, you know, as we learned when we were young, if you have nothing nice to say, let's not say it at all. I can understand the questions. I appreciate questions. I appreciate dialogue. One person emailed me and said, just because of your endorsements, I'm not voting for you. Okay, so I emailed back. I said, don't not vote for me because of my endorsements. Vote for me because I'm more experienced than my opponent, and let me tell you why. And I sent a lengthy email back to everybody who asked me a question. And he said, you know what? Fair enough. Because of that, I'm going to do my research and I'm going to, you know, and I will vote. I said, that's all I can ask you to do. Because once I know you do your research and you find out my experience over my opponent, you're going to vote for me.
Well, those emails, like I call them keyboard assassins. They're real strong. Yeah. And they will say some vile and horrible things to you. And I can't even tell you how many times on the campaign trail I've been called a communist, a socialist. I just want to destroy people. I hate white people, or I hate Black people. Apparently, I hate everybody. I just want to, look out for Black people. I don't care about anybody else. I just want to lock up cops. I don't want, and I keep saying, you know, the same thing. Try to answer those questions if there's actually a question in there, and really just try to educate people, direct them to the website, talk a little bit about my experience. Sometimes you convert people, but sometimes you just have to figure out, get your armor up, because the insults that will come on a daily basis are a lot. And when you look at that over the course of 8 months or a year, 18 months, it weighs on you, but you have to keep going.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's talk about some of the things that happen. So Nikkei, let's go back to you. Let's talk about that. You talked about that Herald endorsement, but your opponent did something somewhat unique with that Herald endorsement, because the Herald endorsement was meant for you, correct?
Correct. So the Herald endorsement was actually one of the first people who had on Google Meets, I forgot, our questions in our interview. So we had the interview, I want to say back in May, maybe June. So by the time they come out with the endorsement, it's kind of too late to put it on different things. You just send out a blast and you say, thank you, Miami Herald, I got the endorsement. The very next day, my opponent sends an email to his email people that said, thank you, Miami Herald, and put the quote. So to the average eye, it looks like he got the endorsement. So basically, like I said, we work hard. I worked hard for every endorsement I got. I fought every interview. I, just came out gracious and kind and, the person I am to get that endorsement. So how dare you send an email to the general public to say, thank you, Herald, as if you got the endorsement. So, of course, a couple of attorneys got riled up. Of course, I got riled up. I sent it to the Herald. And then other people, sent out emails, how dare you? And the Herald responded and, put him on blast that he misrepresented the intent of, what was said. And I appreciate that. That gave me some, validity. And I was able to share that with other people. But again, our attorney world, we have 17,000 attorneys. And like I said, we have 400,000 voters. So how do I get that out to the community? It's hard. I did the best I can to get it out there. And like Melba said, I don't know 183,000 people, but I got their votes. So I'm very proud of that. Much closer than my last race.
All right. And Ruby, let's get over to you because your situation, woo. So you ran a hard fought race. Mm-hmm. And then you finished the race, like you said, second. Yep. And then what happened after that?
I was terminated immediately.
You were terminated. Hold on. You were terminated. Now you were fired. You were fired.
Yes.
After and you were actually told not to run by your superiors?
Well, I was told by many people not to run, not necessarily my superiors, but by many people in the community. They were basically telling me that it's someone else's turn. It's someone else's job. And that if I ran, that I would be taking it away from them. And, I didn't believe in that because I've worked with the other person. I've known that they didn't necessarily stand for all the morals and, all the fighting issues that I really stood for. And, so I got to see a different side of that person that they didn't necessarily get to see. And I truly believe that we needed an advocate at that office. I truly believe that we needed someone to fight for funding. We're receiving emails from our administrators saying that people or I'm going to say not people, but the public defender in Miami-Dade and the state attorney in Miami-Dade were going to Tallahassee to fight for their people to get raises and stuff like that. Why are we getting an email? Why can't you go? Why can't you come and fight for us for a change? So that was some of the reasons that I was just like, oh my goodness, like we don't have anyone who's there for us, who's looking at our workload. And some of the people at our offices are working 2-3 jobs. I even was one of them. The longest time, for 5 years, while me being at the public defender's office, even as a supervisor, even when I became a chief, I was working 2 jobs. So I was doing the work of the public defender and also, doing the work of, at Macy's, so you're just a cashier at Macy's, or I was doing document review, all of these different things. Sometimes I was at a phone center, all of these different things. And just if I had to do it, just imagine, our secretaries and what they were making and why they had to do second jobs and, the amount of kids that they had. And, I could not stand for that any longer. And I needed to make sure that the people that not only that work for the public defender's office, but our clients were taken care of, because we already know that if your public defender is good, then you have a zealous advocate. And that's what we need in our community. We need to instill the public trust back into the public defender system, because we know that we don't have it. And so plenty of people were telling me not to run and that it was for somebody else. And, I determined that, you don't get to decide that, that's not your decision. It's really up to the people. And ultimately the people decided the way that they wanted to decide it. But, throughout the entire time, one of my opponents was already saying that, he basically was going to let me go. We had a Sun Sentinel forum, and that was the first time that he really said it, when we had our interview with the Sun Sentinel. And he basically told them that I would have a future, but the future wouldn't be there. And then he implied it at some other forums. So it was there, but I had to stand up for what I believed in, because I truly believe that as Black women, we always get silenced, and we should never ever ever be afraid of being that ambitious woman. We should never be afraid of being courageous, and we should never be afraid of being strong-minded. So I continued to do what I did because I knew that it wasn't for me. That would have been selfish. If I did everything and all of this for me, that would have been so selfish. I did it for the people because I know that they deserve better.
And real fast, what's next for you? Because of that termination, what's next for you?
I was after everything happened, I was on Instagram, and I was, getting my little church in, and I came across this message from TD Jakes, love him or hate him, and he was talking about they don't see the ashes, you've been through the fire and they can't smell the smoke. And I was just like, oh my goodness, like, I've just been through so much in my life. Like, God, like, what am I supposed to do next? Like, why did you bring me this far just so I could lose this race? And he told me that it was supposed to be that way. It was supposed to be that way because people needed to see and hear your story. And it's there, it's out there. And, please don't stop. And so I'm not going to stop. I truly believe that I can affect change. To be honest, I don't know where or what that is right now. I really haven't had time to process it all and delve right into my next step, but I'm here. The community is not going to see the last of me, because once I get involved into organizations, once I get involved into doing anything, I am there. You can't get rid of me. So I just know that I'm going to be here for the future, and you're going to be seeing more of me.
I'm sure of it. And Melba, I have to ask you, because of everything that you've gone through running for state attorney, going up against this giant, what's next for Melba Pearson?
Well, what's next is a little rest and relaxation, because being on the campaign trail I am literally on vacation right now. This is from my hotel room in Washington.
Oh, nice.
But listen, for me, number one, you have to practice self-care, because you are of no use to anyone if you are falling apart yourself. Right. So I'm going to spend some time with family, relax, rest, and then weigh my options. Some really interesting opportunities have already presented themselves. So I'm just, kind of just taking it into consideration to see where I can be of most help and of most use to the people, to the movement, making sure that I'm helping effectuate long-lasting change and that we're doing something with the movement that we've built. I will continue to be an advocate for our communities, for the communities who finally felt like they had a voice during the time of my campaign. But most importantly, one thing that I like to say is that once people are awakened, once people are woke, they don't go back to sleep. So during our 8 months, and that's something I'm really proud of with my team, we brought and shed light to so many major issues. So the genie's out of the bottle, and we can't, we're not going to move backwards. So either change is going to happen, or a bigger change is going to happen in 4 years, period, end of story. But I'm going to keep fighting for the community. So that's definitely what's next.
Amen. And Nikkei, I want to ask you the same question, but first and foremost, I want you to talk about the importance of voting for state attorneys, public defenders, and most importantly, judges, because a lot of people don't realize that judges, they're the ones that make the decisions at the end of the day. They are the ones that rule on law, rule on whether or not you will be locked up or get probation, rule on whether or not you are innocent or not. How important is it that voters understand that?
It's very important. And, Melba, Ruby, and I were talking earlier that most on the campaign trail, we're not even talking about ourselves, right? We're not even saying, hey, vote for me. We're explaining to the community the importance of our judges, of our state attorneys, of our public defenders, of school board, of, our commissioners. We continue to tell people you vote from the bottom up. You don't wait till November. Many people don't even know we have an August, a primary election. It's ridiculous. So many times out there, we're just telling them the judges are the one who do those red light traffic tickets. If you own a business and you have a contract, landlord tenant, if somebody passes away, everybody has somebody who has passed away. And that's probate court. We talk about, the criminal cases. We talk about civil court. We talk about getting divorces, child support, dependency issues when a child is taken away from a family member. Your judges are of the utmost importance. And we continue to tell the community, we will talk to the community, we will go to forums, we'll have forums, but we have to somehow relay education-wise. The state attorneys, an elected position. Many people, again, think they're appointed. And for judges, some are appointed and some are elected. So we have a two-way system. Not every state has that. And then same with the public defenders. That's an elected position. And you, the people, get to make that choice who it is. So it's very important. And we continue to talk to each other. We continue to talk to anybody who will listen to us, the importance of voting for your judges, your state attorney, your public defender, your school board, your commissioners, not just the top. We have to start at the bottom for your local. We always say local elections matter. It makes a difference. And then many people you won't even see them on the November ballot. It stops in the primary. The buck stops. That's it.
So important. So important. And what is next for Nikkei?
So I've had so many people say, based on the campaign that, hey, you can do something on the national level or, a House rep, a senator, or Congress. But, when people say, hey, stay in your lane, all I know is the law. All I've wanted to do since a little girl was to be an attorney, to be a judge. So again, I may go back to appointment process, which I had done before some few years ago when we had Governor Rick Scott. And now my team is like, team no sleep, no stop. I did rest. I had vacation like Melba, but self-care is important. So I do want to find a spa or two, even though it's COVID-19. I need somebody I need a massage. All this work I did out in the hot sun, I need something to relax. But yeah, so maybe, 2022 or 2024. So many people have texted me about the young lady who won judge in Duval County. I think she tried 16 times. I'm not doing that. But my hat off to her and proud of that sister. But many people applied for appointment about that many times, 12, 14, 16 times. I'd only tried 5 at that point in my career. So I will probably go back to the appointment process, seeing what seat, is available and what suits me. And again, probably look out in 2022, 2024 for one more run.
That is great. That is great. Yeah, all I have to do is say, do it. And I must say this, as a father of 2 young, Black, beautiful women, you are all winners in my book. You set an example. You give them something to look up to. I just thank you. I thank you for your courage. I thank you for the fact that you did this. And no matter what anybody says, all of you made a difference and you made an impact. Don't stop doing that. Do not stop. Words of wisdom from me, Jawan Strader. So I just want to thank you. And I want to thank you so much for joining us. Now, before you guys go, I want to make sure everyone out there, if you are watching, if you have any comments, questions, or anything else, I want you to write us in. Let us know your thoughts on today's show. You can tweet me. You can curse me out. You can do whatever you want at Jawan NBC6, and also follow me on Instagram. Also, as always, we want to leave you with some resources and information on voting, from races being recounted to the latest on the race for the White House. You can find it all right there. Just head on over to the NBC6 webpage at NBC6.com/news/politics. As you see, all the information is there, everything you need. And so let's thank our panelists once again for joining us for this all important conversation. I want to thank you, Ruby, Melba, Nikkei. Thank you so much. All of you are my wonderful sisters and queens. I really appreciate you. And we will continue this conversation. And you have me now. So, hey, I'm going to hunt you guys down when we have another conversation about some of the issues happening across South Florida and around the country. Thank you so much. And everyone out there, thank you so much for tuning in to NBC6 Voices. I'm Jawan Strader. Have a great evening.
Bye.